Most individuals are good individuals. No one wakes up during the day and doesn't want to do the right thing or doesn't want to be successful. But a lot of times those individuals are not in the right environment for themselves to be successful. And therefore your team is not going to feel success from those individuals, right?
You're listening to the Revenue-Driven CMO, the podcast where we break down the most effective growth strategies from top marketing leaders. Join us every week as we dive into their stories, challenges, and insights that drive revenue. This show is brought to you by Level Agency, where AI-enabled performance marketing expertise blends the art and science of marketing to deliver measurable results.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Revenue-Driven CMO. I am your main man, Chris Mechanic, here with a really exciting and interesting guest that I can't wait to get into it with. This is somebody with extensive experience, both in the product marketing side of the world, as well as product management. He's held several key leadership roles, shaping strategies and driving innovation at tech companies of different sizes. But he spent 18 years in the mobile and security industries, where he led marketing efforts for IBM. You ever heard of them, right? As well as Fiberlink Mass 360, which was acquired by IBM in 2013. Today, he's VP of Marketing at Phenom, which is a really exciting company in the talent management and acquisition space that I'm interested to learn more about. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. Jonathan Dale, aka JD. What's up, JD? How are you?
Chris, I really appreciate the invite to the show. Thanks for having me on. Pretty excited about this.
Dude, this is going to be awesome. And let me just tell you and Devin, you've got one of the best rigs we've seen, like in terms of the studio and the production quality. I've been really impressed.
Awesome. Yeah, we have an amazing team here.
Yeah. So, we like to lead with the value. We like to get right to it. Tell us, what's one of the biggest secrets to your success so far?
Yeah, I think I've been very fortunate to be grown up in different SaaS environments and understand the value of amazing teams and the ability to build, mentor, coach, and deliver really on building those teams, like teams that can step up and absolutely run through walls and then get up, hydrate, and run through another wall and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. So I think, if you were to boil down my superpower or the secret of my success, it's really been the success of the teams that I've worked on or worked for. Because, sometimes you're working for a team, sometimes the team's working for you, sometimes you're working hand in hand. And the secret, I've been very fortunate to see how the best of the best wake up every day, perform their roles, and be part of that. And then figure out, well, how do you build a whole culture? How do you build an entire team that works for a company and does that all the time? And it is hard to do.
Walk us chronologically through your career progression and how this became one of your big secrets. I imagine you were maybe on a team at some point that was like that, and you learned the characteristics of it and then eventually learned to build them yourselves. But imagine that you're speaking with somebody who's just graduating from high school, right? Or from college right now, entering the world. And this is your secret, chronologically, sort of, how did you learn this and how did it become so ingrained in your playbook?
In my culture, my playbook. I think the first thing I would say is, in high school, I had an amazing guidance counselor that told me that I'm probably not the right fit to go to college. And they said, I don't know why you're looking at colleges. You may want to look at some of these other trades or some of these other activities. And I said, I appreciate that. I'm going to give college a go. And I didn't know what the heck I was going to go to college for at the time, other than I read one article that said computer science majors are going to be in big demand for the next 10 years. And so I said, I guess I'm going to college for computer science. I got into the one college. I went to the one college that even accepted me. And then from there, I continued to struggle. I continued to struggle and be the non-typical college person. Didn't get that great of grades. Maybe I was a C average at best. And there were some topics that I really gravitated towards. And there were other topics that I really struggled with. And senior year of college, I was behind in credits and I needed to take some ungodly amount of classes in order to get credits in time. And a guidance counselor told me, you need to stay a fifth year. And I said, why? And they said, because your GPA is low and you need to focus on that. And I said, I'm going into computer science. I need to get my degree and get a job. I don't need to focus on a GPA because no one's going to ask me about what it is. And I took evening classes. I took classes at different community colleges. I graduated on time and I got into the working world. And at that point, something switched and something changed in me. And I went from understanding all of the classes and schoolwork that I struggled to commit to. And it was like, wow, I've been waiting all this time to be able to make a contribution and an impact to a company. And I started with a small company. I was a 54th employee at a tech company, and that's Fiberlink, as you mentioned. And I was in a customer support role, a technical support role. And from that day of joining that company, I felt driven. And it was a total different. If you knew me in school, I was probably a totally different person overnight, or at least it would appeared that way. So that's the start of my journey.
You were a little lackadaisical in school, but then once you got out on the floor and you were fielding calls, you were like, let's go, baby. But when was the first time you experienced a team that, I love your run through walls analogy, right? Like, when was the first time you experienced that team? Was it at Fiberlink?
Yeah, it was the culture of a small tech startup. The entire company was a culture of do what it takes to get it done and rally. Now, that was, I told you I was a 54th employee. So at the leadership level, our co-founders there relied on everyone to get the job done and do whatever it took. And I was like, holy crap, from sales to product to engineering to the QA team to the customer support team, everyone needed to just do whatever it took. Because at the time, you're talking early 2000s, developing software at the time and being able to roll that software out. It was a team effort for a company that size. So
It was difficult to do, for sure.
yeah, and so I saw at a small time, wow, what an amazing difference the right collective people could make. And so that was my first exposure to, a really high performing team. And as you know, things change as companies grow and they get bigger, or if that culture is not at a company. So I was very fortunate that I started with a company that had a culture like that I was able to start learning from.
So let's keep going with that. That's an amazing experience, right? Like, that's like a startup. It doesn't sound like they were a basement startup exactly. I mean, you were number 54, so they were probably in their first office spaces or what have you. But that's an amazing experience. And I think that there's a lot that bigger companies can learn, and it's no secret, right? Like, big companies do try to emulate startups and they do spin-offs and, internal little ventures. But what happened next? So Fiberlink grows, you probably advance within Fiberlink, get acquired by IBM, it sounds like.
Yeah. So what's interesting to that story is I told you I'm a computer science graduate and I'm doing tech support. And I probably did tech support for, I don't know, it was 7 years at Fiberlink. And then I got exposure to product management. And then I got exposure to product marketing. Then I got exposure to marketing. Then I really specialized in media, comms, analyst relations. So I was at a startup for, think about it, over a 12-year period of growth and expanding different roles. I worked on many different teams as the company expanded. And the common thread was that I started looking at and seeing is, why do we have high performers, medium performers, low performers? What do different leaders and managers, what is their acceptance policy? Like, their acceptance to different levels of performers on teams. And so over the long period of time, you see teams that are really high performing in the culture of the individuals within those teams and how they interact with, say, the culture of the company as well as a whole. And so I got a lot of exposure in that. And at a young age, I will say I was entrusted to lead and manage people and teams of people. So in that career path I mentioned, I was brought onto the leadership and management path early. So I got to learn and make a lot of mistakes. And I got to make a lot of hiring mistakes. And I realized, wow, my team that I'm responsible for doesn't succeed well when we don't hire well, or when we make rush decisions, or when we bring folks who, why didn't that person work out? I don't know. And then you reflect on that individual and you realize most times, here's what I found. I reflect on the individual is not the problem. The individual in your culture, in your setting, in your company is the issue. You have a mismatch. You have a personality or culture or a work ethic. You have a mismatch. The individuals themselves are not necessarily good, bad individuals. Most individuals are good individuals. No one wakes up during the day and doesn't want to do the right thing or doesn't want to be successful. But a lot of times those individuals are not in the right environment for themselves to be successful. And therefore, your team is not going to feel success from those individuals, right? It's not a good match. So I had a lot of exposure to those type of scenarios over the years to start learning, wait a second. If we want to kick ass high performing team to run through walls, what does that need to look like? What types of individuals do we need? And who thrives and who doesn't thrive in our environment? And that environment is different by company. So the environment at Fiberlink was much different than the environment at IBM, which I stayed for 4.5 years, which is much different than the environment here at Phenom that I've been here over 6 years. So you have to understand the environment, the culture, what's valued, what's not, and then build teams from there.
That is a hallmark quote right there. Having to understand the environment, the culture, what's valued, and build the teams accordingly. I think that's, maybe the landmark quote. But let's stay in the Fiberlink era, right? Like, let's go to like the middle or the end of your Fiberlink experience, where it sounds like, were promoted multiple times and you were probably like involved or, in charge of more things, but not in charge of the whole boat like you are today. But like, what were some of the things that you observed in those days in the higher performing teams? Maybe even teams you weren't even in charge of. But like, what did the higher performing team do or say or embody or act like that the lower performing team didn't, regardless of the department?
Yeah, I think what I would share is generally when I observed personally higher performing teams are not. You look at what challenges they're taking on, and so it's whether you're taking on a challenge or whether you have a reduction in resources or you have limited capacity to do something. That's when you realize, wait a second, this team, they've got folks who just grind it out. Like if you're wondering who's there, like you got to remember the days, this is the days of coming in the office 5 days a week, all the time. Who are the team members that are getting in the door early and staying late? There was not a remote work culture because it didn't really exist at the time. So I'm bringing you back to the era that you saw the grinders, and the grinders made no excuses. It's a time and an era when it was going to snow 9 inches of snow and people still were trying to figure out how they're able to get into the office so they can make a difference that day, right? I'm not comparing eras, but at the time when you're asking me about what are the observations of those teams, I saw the folks who were making no excuses for anything they did and delivered. I also saw raw candidness and the ability to be selfless. The highest performing teams at the time that I saw, they were not worried about covering their ass. They weren't worried about covering their ass. They were worried about how they're going to work together to deliver to the result. And if they under-delivered, they were the ones saying, yeah, I didn't get that done, or I'm late on this. I need 5 more hours to get this role or this task done, or it's just not there yet. And they didn't care whether someone was going to criticize them about being 5 hours late, because they knew it doesn't matter about the criticism. We still got to get this done. So let's say it's not done and let's keep driving to the result. They were not paralyzed by any fear.
And those were generally technical teams at Fiberlink, more so than marketing teams, I imagine.
I'll tell you what, we had a marketing leader at Fiberlink at the time who I did not work for. And I always thought, damn, I'd like to work for him. His name was Bill Wagner, and he's gone on to some very, very big success in some public companies. So, he probably wouldn't know the impression he had on me back then. But that was someone outside of his team, seeing how he drove his team, his employees, and been being extremely impressed by what they were able to step up, deliver, and then how they loved it. It's like, wow. I mean, I love my job. I've always loved my jobs, but you got a whole team of people who just seem to be like perfectly happy running through walls and coming back and doing it again. And they had a
And
lot of pride.
hydrating in between.
You got to hydrate.
I love your
You,
hydrate. That's so
you have to survive. I'll get into that later. You can build a team that runs through one wall, but if they can't survive the recovery process, how can you go through another wall? It's a problem.
So tell me about Bill Wagner a little bit more. So you've told me about the characteristics of his team, right? How they wouldn't make excuses. They would show up on snow days, right? They were really, it sounds like, more mission focused than individually focused. What did you observe in Bill Wagner that inspired you?
I was inspired by him on how he set the example for his team. I don't remember him ever making an excuse. I don't remember him ever not going above and beyond on his daily day and his daily grind. And it set a tone to me of, wow, I guess that's what a leader looks like. Like, as a young, impressionable person, wow, that must be what a leader looks like and how they behave, because his team has a lot of respect for him. And look what he's getting his team to do. Right. So that's, I can't tell you all of his intricacies because I didn't work for him. I worked around him and I got to observe. But those are the things I've seen. His behaviors were not different of the behaviors that he expected from every single one of his team members. Right. You wouldn't know the difference. You wouldn't know the difference. Someone's not doing it because they're told to do it. They're doing it because they believe this is what we have to do to get it done. And that's a huge differentiator if you have a team that operates that way. And I observed that back then.
That's awesome. Yeah. I wonder how much of that was due to just like the sheer showing up early and staying late, which in today's day and age, that might be criticized a little bit for having like a lack of a work-life balance. But I'm old enough that I remember those days. I mean, that's how I shined in my early career working at an agency. Like, I always wanted to be the first one there and always the last one to leave. And that was recognized and congratulated openly, But in today's day and age, it's quite different.
Oh, it's quite different. It's a controversial topic. I think right now, what I observe even on the marketing team that I run now, I tell my team, no one is ever measured on how many hours they put in or they don't put in. I don't know what my employees in my team, I think they think I monitor all of these things. And the reality is I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know how many days off a certain employee took off in a given year. I don't know. I don't care. What I care about is when we're having calls and when we need to get something done, which is all the time in our culture. We're always trying to get something done. We're always trying to take on some big damn project, like big thing that makes significant impact to the business. Are we getting it done? Are we showing up and are we grinding and getting it done? And then I do care whether they're getting that rest and recovery afterwards. Although rest and recovery, I'll stress, is unique to the individual. I have individuals that will go months without taking a day off. And guess what? They're not at risk of having their disappointment in some way. They're not sitting there waiting for someone to take them to have a day off because they're empowered and they know when I need time off, I step away. And that's what you really want from a team. You want them to know that they're empowered and enabled to take time off, to take that break. And they do it without being told. But some folks, you have to say, man, you need that long weekend. Like, I don't know if you have plans on Friday. I don't know if you need to make plans, but you need to not work this Friday. I don't care what you do. It's not going on the board of you took a day off. You just need to step away. And you know what I get a lot of times? Hey, that would be awesome. I have a few meetings in the morning. Maybe I'll take the afternoon away. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, that's what you need to recharge a little bit. It's a good thing.
Well, that's a difficult thing for employees to navigate, especially if you're new to an org, right? Because generally, even if you're unlimited PTO or like flex time off, usually it requires some notice. But like if I'm just having a really bad day today, or if I just really need a rest today, and I don't really have anything to do, that is something that I think is challenging for people. So I think that it would be the minority that would come to you and say, hey, I could really use this long weekend this weekend. Because most, even with, I don't know, do you guys have unlimited PTO?
Yeah. Yep. Yes, we do. Yeah. Unlimited PTO.
But it still requires some notice.
In theory, it requires, in theory, it requires some notice.
Do you communicate like proactively to your team that like, look, I get that our official policy is that it's 2 weeks off, but if you need a day off and you don't have something to do, like just let me know and you can have that day. Is that something that you do?
No, I don't think I've ever done that. I think what I tell a lot of my employees and team is, I expect you to take time off when you need time off. You shouldn't, I shouldn't have to tell you to take time off. It doesn't mean you don't have to remind people, but I don't wait for me to tell you. Like, you need to know you can do that. You need to know you could do it, and you don't need an excuse to do it. Oh, I need to take this day off because so-and-so is doing so-and-so and I need to help them. Okay. You can explain that to me if you want, no problem. But the most important thing is I tell everyone, you're not asking for permission to take time off. You're giving awareness that you are taking time off. Do you know what I mean? You're stating your intention. I am taking this next, 2 Fridays off. Great. Now, if I go and, oh my gosh, that's going to cause a conflict, but I say, hey, that's great. That's good. Thanks for giving me the heads up. We have the weekly business review reports that are due. How are we going to get them done? I'm going to do them on Sunday nights those weeks. Enjoy your time. Right? I'm not approving. We have a system. We have a system, and an HR system, and it tells you, oh, employees requested these days. A lot of times, I accept those requests. It's months and months afterwards because they're not. Employees are not my employees are not waiting on me to accept their request. I have the awareness. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a fine line, and it's something that we've struggled with, actually. Not so much struggled with, but because you have some people who are just fine. It depends on the personality. Some people are like, hey, I smashed all my work this week. I've got nothing on the calendar. Like, I'm taking the next 3 days off and I don't really care what you have to say about it. But there's a different breed of people who are like, oh my God, the policy is that I need 2 weeks notice, but I really would like to take these next couple days off,
Yeah. I think, Chris, what's interesting in high performing environments, usually the individuals that are thinking about taking time off, they're already thinking about not just their work. You got to understand, their work is not just their work many times. Their work is the team's work. There's so much reliance on these high performing teams, reliance on each other, especially in the marketing environment. In the marketing environment, the collaboration and the level of your organizing across the team is at an extremely high level most of the time. So when they're thinking, well, I'm going to take this time off, I know team members are saying, wow, I might be putting Monica in a tough situation if I take these 2 days off. I got to make sure she understands that I'm thinking about taking this time off. Or we're ready to launch and execute on a big virtual event. Okay, you just can't set the date of when that virtual event is. You have to ask around to some of the key stakeholders. Hey, are there any vacations coming up that this could cause an issue? Because we may have to move this back a week or up a week to help, because there's a lot of dependence on people. But it's interesting. That goes to that, selfless. The highest performing teams, I find, have empathy and care about everyone around them first, and they want to get their job done. It's a really sweet thing to see, is that caring of others, because at the end of the day, what I found is those top performers and those top performing teams, that the individual success is not first and foremost. It's truly, did we accomplish what we're trying to as a team? And did I step up and play my part and my role in achieving that? And the ones that feel left out, doesn't mean they didn't do it, but they have that feeling of, did I do enough? It's an interesting thing. And sometimes you have to reinforce that they did do enough. They played their part and they played it to an extremely strong level.
So you mentioned hydration, which I love that metaphor. And you sort of clarified it with rest and recovery. And you said that different people rest and recover differently. How do you go about, like, suppose you have a team of 10 people or 20 people or however many it is. How do you go about determining, like, okay, how does this person rest and recover? How much rest and recover does this? Is this person properly hydrated? Like, do you have a formula for that? Or is it just kind of, do you just talk to people and you feel them out? Or how do you ensure that people are resting and recovering the way that they're supposed to rest and recover?
It's interesting that I mentioned that and you bring this question back up because I'm saying, no, everyone's empowered. They have to be able to take time off on their own. And it's not really my job to do that. In a way, though, I'm saying it is the job of leaders to know and encourage because you want to keep reinforcing that, yeah, this is the norm. You have to step away for a little bit. Our job's not to protect them from the work to be done. The work to be done is the work to be done. It's overwhelming all the time, but we do have to make sure people are healthy. And part of that health goes back to that. So how do you know? Well, I know certain leaders on my team and I expect them to know their employees really, really well and what's needed at that individual level. And what you encourage someone else to step away, you may have to tell someone else, look, I know you're like been going crazy for 4 weeks straight, 5 weeks straight, 6 weeks straight, but I need you for 2 more weeks. And then why don't you think about adding 2 days to that holiday that's coming up, right? Because I know that person knows it's not realistic for them to get a break in the next 2 weeks, but let's get them to look forward to an extended period of time tied to a holiday that we're already going, that they go, yes, that actually will feel good. Some people know you just need a day, you need a few hours, you need 3 days, whatever it is. It's at the individual level. And leaders, because we have empathy and high performing teams, we have empathy for each other. You're looking out for each other and going, okay, I think I need to make sure that they have time off planned. A lot of times I say, hey, you have any planned time off coming up? And they're like, yeah, there's a wedding we're going to. We're taking off a Friday in a few weeks. I say, great. I don't need to do more. Sometimes I say, is there an opportunity for you to make it a long weekend? Do you want to add an extra day to that? I think you should add, actually, if you're going out on Friday, why don't you cut out on Thursday too, Wednesday night, Thursday, and just make it a longer trip, right? There's just ways to do it without actually going there and saying, you need to take this, you need to step away.
No, I totally feel that. And it's very interesting. One thing that dawned on me, so I'm a marketer, right? Like self-taught, taught myself SEO first, got into the agency world and I learned PPC and I was like 22 years old at this time, right? And apparently I was really good at that. I was giving lunch and learns to the whole team and, figuring stuff out. And I got into copywriting and, eventually broke off and started my own agency. And then, 15 years went by and it was very successful. Like we were in the 10X club on the Inc. 5000 type of thing. But I learned probably in year 3 or 4 that it's not about the marketing anymore. It's about people, right? And it's about selling the deals and talking with the clients and setting their expectations and things like that. It sounds like you learned that back in the Fiberlink days, but that's what all the best CMOs do. Like all the best CMOs know that it's not so much about managing people. It's about like inspiring movements, and it's not so much about like marketing. It's about more so like building. And like the best CMOs, I think, are doing more than just building brands. They're kind of like building businesses and building people and building teams. So it's really inspiring, man. I mean, I think you're doing it right. And I'm curious, like from your perspective. So you mentioned another thing that jumped out at me, which was like, hey, problems aren't necessarily all about the problem itself. It's sometimes about the individual. So like when you're looking out at your team and you're thinking like, hey, is this the right person? Like, do you have a set of criteria or a checklist or something? Because there there's a certain breed of people that's ready to run through walls. And it might not even be about person's personality. It might be about the timing in their life, right? Like for instance, if they just had a baby and their paternity leave or their maternity leave is up, but they still have like a 6-month-old baby at home, right? Like maybe that's not the time. But do you have like a sniff test or some kind of a criteria or something that you can determine like, is this actually, from the fiber, the right person that will run through walls? Or is it maybe just a bad time in their life that they just need a little bit of grace period?
That is a that is a tricky question to answer. So I'm going to do my best shot at answering that. And the first thing I will say is I have a phrase. What is the phrase? It's funny. If I'm going to say I have a phrase, I better have a phrase, right? So I'm trying to think of how I articulate the phrase.
Take your time.
I have a philosophy that you shouldn't really have to manage people. If you have to manage people, you either have the wrong people or you have the wrong leader. So that's the phrase, right? If you have to manage people, you have the wrong people or you have the wrong leader, and you have to figure out what is what. And what I mean by that is the best, highest performing teams, in building those teams, you recognize that you're really not managing. You're really leading. This is what you've said. You're really leading, you're building, you're mentoring, you're coaching, you're steering, you're getting them to grow. Great teams have talent that grows exponentially. So your role isn't to manage them and their days off and anything else. If you have those issues, you probably don't have the people who are the highest performers that are growing exponentially and thriving in your environment. So again, they're not bad. They are not bad as individuals or contributors, but they're probably not the right fit for the environment, and they are probably feeling uncomfortable. And you're pushing a team to run through walls, and that's not going to gel well. So how do you find these? Like, right? So what are the signs or indicators? And, I think you look for hunger. You look for someone who's truly hungry, that doesn't say, hey, I want to own this. Hey, I want to own that. I teach very early on. I try to coach early on. When people say they want to own something, I said, okay, well, why haven't you owned it? Like, why haven't you gone, grabbed it, started owning it, started doing it, so that it's not about whether you should own it. It's like, wow, that individual owns this. Now we just make it formal. There was 2 individuals on my team currently. This just happened in the last 2 weeks. They've been doing such a fantastic job owning what we call as our WBRs, our weekly business review, our MBR, monthly business review, and our QBR, quarterly. But they've been doing such a good job owning and leading those conversations that with executives, they're literally going through slides and talking about our data. And I said, oh my God, this is amazing. They grew into a role where they are truly owning it. I'm not owning it anymore. So I said, guys, let's just make it official. You guys own this. You own all the coordination with the rest of the marketing team, making sure we are prepped for every, QBR, MBR, and QBR. And they were like, great. And I said, I just want to make it clear. You have been owning this and you've stepped up. I didn't ask you. I didn't force this upon you. So we're just making it official. And I so appreciate it. Like individuals, they think it's granted to them that all of a sudden, if I tell you to own this, all of a sudden, then you own it and do well. So part of it is that watching for individuals who are proactive in their learning and growth. And if you see someone who's already proactive in that, now as a leader and manager, I say that is a huge sign. And now I'm going to give them more exposure, activity, tasks, things that are impactful. And if they continue to step up and just own on their own all of those and keep delivering, that's part of that litmus test. So we've got something special here, or we have someone that's special here. And now we just have to make sure we help them continue down the path they're going. And those individuals, I recognize they're already going down a path of success, whether they are here at Phenom or whether they're somewhere else. I can tell they're going to be successful at their life and at their role. And now I'm going to fuel that. And we're going to fuel it to help them exponentially learn. And therefore, they will make a gigantic, outsized impact to the company and our team. So it's like, that's one sign.
Well, I fully concur with that. And that's something that we call evidence of hustle. Evidence
I
of
like
hustle.
that. Yeah, I
We
like that
look for
term.
that with so we do like an internship program every year where, we basically take people that are about to graduate from college, and there's hundreds and hundreds of applications, and we whittle it down to like 5 or 10 of them that we hire as interns. And then most of them we hire afterwards. But that's the number one thing that we look for is evidence of hustle. So I want to see somebody who has started their own YouTube channel or started their own food blog or something, has gone and taught themselves how to do this and has like started and tried to do it themselves. But that very much, I agree with you, correlates into the actual once they're on the job. And it's not just the junior level folks. Sometimes it'll be very senior level folks that you hire, and they still demonstrate that evidence of hustle. They're bringing to you the latest AI shit and Perplexity APIs or whatever it is, So it's not necessarily like a junior versus senior conversation. It's just that evidence of hustle. And I agree with you. It's not like it's a good person or a bad person. I think it's largely the stage of life that a person's in.
Yeah, I just want to make comment on your whether it's a mature person in their career, or whether it's a younger person in your career, age. And I'm very open with this with my team. I don't see age. I am blind to age. I don't care, could care less. You had mentioned earlier in the show, where you were talking about like graduating college and stuff. I have never looked at a resume in my hiring career, at least in the last 10 years, and looked at education. Not once I've looked for education. Not once have I cared. But you know why? Because I said I was never good in school. I was told I shouldn't even be in school. I could care less about someone's school, but I do care about their experience and their drive and their work ethic. I was I believe the first one in my family to go to college. My mother was a nurse her entire career. My dad was a welder and a machinist. I saw work ethic, and I saw that life wasn't fair, and that my dad always said, "Leah, life's not fair. Dad, it's not fair. Life's not fair." And I go, "Oh, okay. See, life's not fair doesn't mean it's bad. It just means the reality that it's not fair. So stop looking for it to be fair. Go get it. Go after it. Go hustle. Go grind. Go put in the extra hours so someone notices." Yeah, but so-and-so got a promotion. I didn't get a promotion. Okay, well then figure out what it takes to make an impact to go get a promotion, right? It's like these things, it doesn't matter what your age is. If you're exposed to it or if it's naturally in you, that behavior, that's a great thing. And if it's not naturally in you, hopefully you are around some mentors or some individuals that you can see that and realize, wow, like that's the type of behavior and tone I should set. And if I do that, I will continue to be successful. And those are the individuals we look for here. In reverse, if someone doesn't have the experience in a particular area, whether it's their years of experience or whether it's just they've never had that experience, that type of part of marketing, it doesn't matter to me. I see that and I recognize, oh, well, it might not take them 5 years to learn that. It might take them 1 year. So feed it. Feed trying to get them wherever we need to get them as quickly as possible. It doesn't matter. I remember my time at IBM, there was a situation where I said, this person is already incredible and they're going to continue to be incredible. Like, what else can we give them? What other roles can we get them into? And it was told to me, no, don't worry. That person has lots of time. And what do you mean has lots of time? What does their career path and time have to do with their growth and making an impact? It doesn't matter. So it's like, those are some of these things that stick with me.
So that's maybe a message to the young people listening, is that you don't necessarily have to slog through 10 years to get to be a director role or a senior director or even a VP. Like, you might be able to achieve that theoretically, within 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, if you put in the time and the effort. Like, I love people who, like, we have people on our team who, like, we'll go to them and say, there's this one cat, Derek Gaff. He started with us way early on, and he was very underqualified, and we hired him anyway. But he was just a learner and a reader and a tester and a tinkerer, and he just went for it. And he still does to this day, 10 years later. And I'm like, Derek, take a vacation. And he's like, dude, well, I don't really have anything to do, and I kind of like this stuff. So, like, why do I? He's like in the HubSpot forums and in the, different forums, answering people's questions and building shit all the time. Like, props to you, Derek Gaff. You're the man.
Yeah, there's a lot of individuals that recognize that they recognize this. I'm going to answer a particular point you made. I'll complement it. We were doing two different job descriptions recently, two different ones. One's for like a marketing ops role. One is for campaign director, senior manager campaigns. And I'm working with the executive director, and we're like, well, how many years experience do we think someone should have? And so we want someone a bit more senior. Okay. So what we wrote, I'm pretty sure we published this, the equivalent of 8 years experience, the equivalent. I don't need to see 8 years, but I need to see you are in an environment where you learned approximately what would be more senior experience over a period of time. In our marketing team, I mean, many marketers have said this. What we learn in 1 quarter at Phenom, 1 quarter, is an entire year of learning at another company's marketing team. Like, that's what I'm saying. When you have a high performing team, you're taking on these giant challenges, these obstacles. You get ridiculous amount of exposure. And with that exposure, if you're not limited in your growth, you're exposed to all of this, you're absorbing it, you're contributing from an equivalent experience. You got it. You have it. And then apply it.
Dude, it's so funny. We said that exact same thing, but articulated in years. We were like, 1 year here is worth 3 years anywhere else.
There you go. This is great, right? And so the performing teams we talk about that run through walls, they live for that. You don't train to sit around and do nothing, right? I won't make any military references because I'm not in the military, and I will embarrass myself by using those references. But what I like to say is, let's say you want to be a professional boxer, and you train for, I don't know, years, but you never step into a ring to box. Why? Like, your ambitions is to be a professional boxer. See, our marketing ambitions is to be the best B2B marketing team in the world. That is our ambition. Now, we have to do that in line with making the company successful. We can't just go off and go random stuff and do cool things because we think it's cool. No, we have to make some really hard decisions. But to be the best of the best, to aspire to that, well, we better get a lot of practice. And so to get a lot of practice, you better take on a lot of really hard, challenging things, and you better keep learning and growing from them. Okay, well, that's the only way you can do it. And you get that experience and you get that equivalency.
Let's talk about Phenom a little bit. Like, tell us, like, for folks that aren't familiar, I'm fairly familiar, but for folks that aren't, just tell us, from a broad level, who are you guys, or what are you all about?
Phenom is simply an AI company that specializes in HR. So our solutions for talent acquisition, talent management, HR IT professionals, recruiters, hiring managers, everything we build is to make their jobs easier. So for example, we help companies hire faster. We help them retain talent, right? We help them build and scale their teams. And we do that for some of the largest companies in the world. So we do this for many Fortune companies. And so we've got a SaaS platform, a data platform, an experience platform, all wrapped up into one. And we think we have an extremely unique approach in the industry. And companies have so far adopted it and are seeing some great success.
Yeah. And I can see you've won all types of awards. I mean, you're heavily awarded, and you've got, it looks like almost 1,900 employees per LinkedIn anyway.
We've been a growing company. I think if you look at startups over the last, say 12 years who are doing well. We are doing very well. We're in great position to continue taking advantage of the market and the conditions that the market's going through. Um, and it's a good, strong position to be in, and it's a really well-run company.
So I see from your website, you've got sort of these three buckets like acquisition, management, HRIT. Is your revenue, would you say like equally spread throughout those or like, is your bread and butter more so one or the other or?
When you look at any company's history, any startup's history, right? You usually establish yourselves in one particular product. So we went from being essentially a single product, two product company to multiple products to then building out what was always a platform on the back end, but actually building that out to have so many different products and services that you can service the entire market. So we started with talent acquisition. That's where we were known as the gold standard and say candidate experience. And now we've successfully transitioned into talent management and HRIT when you get into, again, career pathing, succession planning, skills-based development and hiring. And then from an IT perspective, part of our platform does an amazing job doing integrations. And for IT and HR, integrations are a major part of success. So so the product company platform has all expanded to be able to go after those markets. And instead of selling a company one thing, we're able to sell them something based upon their need to solve now to get an ROI on that investment or to be successful. And then we can expand also. Some people buy a platform, some people buy a piece of the platform. We try to make it simple.
Well, I love just looking at the website. I love the branding. It looks like, so there's Phenom, but then there's like this moniker like I am. So like I am Phenom. So you're sort of like speaking to the candidates in that regard, like that they're a Phenom, which is cool. And the fly out menus are just dope. Like, because, you've articulated the business, the three pillars, but then you also like in the footers of these fly out menus, just like when you hover over the nav, like when you hover a platform in the nav, in the footers of those fly out menus, you like just sneak in the featured integrations and you sneak in the security and compliance certificates. Like that's pretty dope UX. That's impressive.
I'll tell you what, the team will appreciate hearing your comments on our branding. They're so proud of it, and we continue to evolve the branding. So that's just a compliment that we will accept and feel really appreciated. Thank you very much.
Well, what it looks like is that you used that you ingested some user voice and used that to inform, the elements of the fly out nav.
For the navigation, we're inspired by all kind of companies, but this is the continued, as you're growing your product. We don't have one product to sell. We've got lots of them now. We got the platform. We have to make the navigation work. So we look for inspiration, whether they are customer voice or whether they are just companies that we think they've done it right or they're doing it well. And then we try to make it our own, right? And say, well, then how does it work for us? And sometimes we don't get it right. But in our culture of high performing, we're okay not getting it right. We're okay with the criticism, and let's continue to evolve.
And it looks like you guys are a HubSpot shop. My tools are firing accurately, which is cool. So tell us what's working, like what's really driving the revenue engine. I see you've got an event coming up on March 11th, the Pure Gold event. Is that the major motion, or like, and actually break it down for us rapid fire style, just like percentage wise. So it's like events, 20%, search, 10%. Like how does it?
Here's what I would say. When someone say, well, what makes Phenom and Phenom marketing special? And I have to answer that question. What's working? What makes it special? I say, first of all, we have a great competitive advantage of I Am Phenom. You mentioned I Am Phenom. That is our premier physical event, happens in Philadelphia annually. We've expanded that now to India. So now we have 2 I Am Phenom events in North America and one in India that brings thousands of people in person to hear our keynote, to us for show us our demos and show off the product, talk about the future of where the industry is going. But what it also does is it brings in, I think, 100 different practitioners to lead breakout sessions. So there's no event in HR in the world right now that has as many practitioner-led sessions for others to be inspired and learn from. So our physical event absolutely is a competitive advantage, and it's a commitment, and it's expensive. Let's just say it that way. We can't just all do physical events, right? So we've established really key virtual events. We do an annual AI day. We do an annual skills day. We do what's called industry week, and we do a customer obsession day. All of these things are major events that the entire company, marketing, sales, account management, customer success, customer value, our global customer care teams, everyone gets behind these moments for the company where we articulate to the industry what is going on with AI in our industry, what is going on with skills-based approaches in our industry. How do you roll out HR technology to all the different industry and verticals? And we push all that content out to the market. So you have a physical event, you have these virtual events that are staples, and then you have original research. I think we're maybe in the 8th year. I might be even wrong with that 8th year of the state of candidate experience that we released to the market. So we have these key original research reports that are data driven. We release to the market. So now you see the moat, or actually moat would be defensive. These are offensive weapons to get out there that we get behind. And of course, like other companies, we have definitive guides, product tours. The last, I think, 2 things I'll mention here is we do core value offerings. What is that? What's a core value offering? It's where if a client wants, a prospect or customer want to interact with us, maybe give us 20 minutes of their time, we will give them something of tremendous value. And so if it's skills related, we'll show them a skill snapshot of skills in their own environment with their own data. Just tell us you'd like to do it, and we'll do all the work, and then we'll present it to you. We'll do a custom audit of the candidate journey on their career site, and we'll give them that audit and where they could improve. It's almost like you grew up in the SEO space. You were saying, like, I'm sure you went to company and said, here's where you're failing, or here's where you're great at SEO. And that takes time. So we have 5 to 6 different core value offerings that for just a yes on your part, we will do a lot of work and present it to you, because that's where we're thought leaders. So that's what's working. That mix of assets, resources is working for us. We're proud of it because it takes time.
It's like, so you build the audience, you create audience via a lot of these events. It sounds like you then nurture audiences with free content on your site, and you convert, like the definitive guides would be free content on your site. And then you convert them via, you've got 5 sizzling hot offers, it sounds like, that could, apply to any of your target audience is who, like larger enterprise or mid-market or SMBs?
If you look at any company that has 2,000 employees and up, is our target market, right?
More like upper mid-market or enterprise.
That's right. Yeah. It depends on how it's defined, but enterprise is a grouping in our category. And we look at and you say, okay, that's our market. We're selling to manager level and above. We want to talk to manager level and above. And we want to do that in the talent acquisition, talent management, or in the IT side of the house for HR.
I love that. We could have a whole pod on just that. But what are your challenges in rapid fire?
Okay. The biggest challenge, or the worry is, I mentioned that those offerings, I mentioned the events and the virtual events, that takes hundreds, if not thousands of hours to produce some of those pieces. And if you don't have really crystal clear goals on what we're going to get from it, and you do not have the alignment with the sales organization, which sometimes we struggle with, that's a marketing issue that we take responsibility for, but that's a lot of risk. Right? You're going to pump all that energy, time, effort, trying to get people behind it. If they don't get behind it, it's bad for the company. It's not bad for marketing. It's not bad for sales. It is bad for the company. And that's what I That's what stresses me out. If anything stresses me out, that's what stresses me out, is the things we are investing the most time in are not the right ones aligned with where sales also believes. Because I tell sales, marketing's not doing things for marketing's sake to brag and pat ourselves on the back. It does no good. We're doing things to move the needle in conversation, in meetings, in your ability to reach new markets, or our ability as a company to reach new markets. So that's what really worries me.
Have you found a way to mitigate that risk, or is there anything that you can do to, you know, to be more confident before you put the hours into something?
Here's what we're learning, I'll tell you. So the answer is not quite, not quite where we think we have it solved by having really tight integration with the SDR team. And then they promote and use what we built for prospecting, and they see great results. We think we have wins, and then all of a sudden we produce something and it's like, oh, they were too busy. They were too busy doing other things, like doing their job. That's not wrong of them to say. So every time we feel like we've gotten over this hump and found something, we've had a setback. So here's the thing now that we're hot on, or I'm hot on. Understand what they want to do versus what they can do. They're not doing something we
They
think they
being
should
who,
do.
the SDRs, or
Sales,
they being, okay.
AEs, SDRs, account development reps, AMs. They want to help, but they cannot. Okay, we have to accept they cannot and take their word on they want to. So now we can really work together to find out how. And I think that's where teams fall down. So-and-so didn't do their job. I can't believe they're not getting behind this. Did they want to get behind it? They just couldn't figure out how to fit it in. And that's part of the gap. We have to say, great, let's solve that piece together, because you want to do something. We want you to do something. Let's find out how we do it. And maybe there's more automation. This is where a lot of the AI technologies, I don't want to lead with, where the world's going or where we feel we need to go. But if we all want to do certain things and we don't have enough time, resources, or ability to do it, okay, this is a perfect example where AI can really make a difference and start helping us. But we have to change our thinking about how we're going about doing some of these things.
When you said that, my immediate thought was that the SDRs were trying, but that like they had a small pool of prospects that were interested in topic A, but they had sort of exhausted those prospects. And that once you produced the report about topic A, they just didn't have like that pipeline left. Like, so it might've been a false positive kind of a thing.
That's fine. That's different. When I talk about that alignment, that's different in my view. That is what you're saying is I believe the continuous feedback loop of, here's an initiative we're trying to push for. Is it successful or not? What I was mentioning is how do you know whether it's successful or not? How do you know we just didn't push hard enough? How do you know we didn't reach the right audience? Maybe it was the right message, we didn't reach the right audience. It was the right thing to do, widget, but we never promoted it in the right way. That is a team effort. But what you're mentioning, I think, is critical to success. And that is, if you do not have that continuous feedback loop with sales, how do you know what's really working or not working on their day-to-day ability to get into accounts?
We'll have a lot of ideas on that. I know we're super short on time, just like 30 seconds or a minute. What are you guys investing in this year, 2025?
I would say, like most companies right now, our highest interest is in tools of scalability and people of scalability. And why I say both is the AI tools need to help us produce things quicker, better, and help us prioritize what we're doing. And the people scaling, if we don't continue to invest in the people that can help us scale, then we'll also fail. And that is the people side is a really hard thing too, because how do you figure out whether you're building the right team to scale? And in the days of limited resources, which marketing will always have limited resources, period. There's not a marketing team in the world that I think is overstaffed. Probably not. We'll always have limited resources. So you better have the people with you be the ones that can help continue to scale.
Well, I think you've got a PhD in that people part of the equation, brother. So I'm confident you'll figure that part out. Dude, this was awesome. There's literally like 3 follow-up pods we could do on this. I'm sure that the audience is going to go absolutely wild for this, and they're going to want to learn more about you, and they're going to want to learn more about Phenom. Where would you direct them if they'd like to learn more?
I mean, our phenom.com website's the best spot to learn about Phenom, and I'm happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn. I love doing it, so feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, and you are Jonathan Dale on LinkedIn, not JD.
That's correct. Yeah, everyone knows me as JD, but I'm Jonathan Dale on LinkedIn.
Well, let me tell you, man, you are an inspiring leader. I would like to work for you, honestly. I mean, I think anybody listening would like to be a part of your team. Like, it sounds like you are down with the latest, but you also embody some like old school kind of work ethic tactics, and you really hire for heart more so than like hire for just head space or talent. So I've been inspired here. I've really enjoyed it. There's a lot of people listening right now. For anybody listening, if you like this or were inspired like I was, feel free to drop us a like or a comment wherever you get your pods, or share this with a friend to pay it forward. Thank you. This was really great. I really enjoyed it. I really learned a lot, and I am walking away inspired. I'm sure many other people are. Stay on the line for just 1 second. We'll wrap up. But for everybody else, that was another awesome episode of Revenue-Driven CMO, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Revenue-Driven CMO. We really appreciate you being here. For more details, show notes, past episodes, head over to revenue-drivencmo.com. This show is brought to you by Level Agency, combining AI-enabled performance marketing expertise with the right mix of data and creativity to fuel growth. Catch you next week.